Hello, this is the Hillbilly Halfwit, and here's Gaza talking about the Welsh Museum cuts. And the people who support the government have been shafted by Drakeford already. So he told them a load of lies. Well, 4.8 billion. So a fifth of the Welsh budget is being spent on climate. All the museums and everything else has been cut all over our beautiful country. Please comment, rate and subscribe and share this stuff out there. Let's get started. Here we are, there's a museum in Wales. Museums to cut 90 jobs and may close Cardiff building. The condition of National Museum of Cardiff is a massive problem, says Chief Executive Jane Richardson. Wales National Museums will axe at least 90 jobs after a big cut in their funding, and more may still go, say the heads of the organisation. One of the best known buildings, National Museum of Wales, may also be forced to close because of its deteriorating condition. The Chief Executive of Museum of Wales, which has 7 sites around the nation, spoke of the extremely difficult task of dealing with a 4.5 million. Now 4.5 million, as we know, is nothing compared to 4.8 billion climate fund, fifth of the Welsh budget. 18 billion is given to the Welsh government every year by the UK to spend, 18 billion to spend on anything they want, and they choose to spend a fifth of that on a climate fund instead of spending it on you and me and the rest of the people. And even the people who vote Labour now are getting this shafted. So the Chief Executive of the Museum of Wales, which has 7 sites around the nation, spoke of the extremely difficult task of dealing with 4.5 million reduction in budget. The Welsh Government said it was making extremely difficult decisions due to its own budget being 700 million less in real terms than it was in 2021. They have a 4.8 billion climate fund. 4.8 billion. A billion is 1,000 million. So they have 4,800 million in the climate fund, and they can't spend it on this. There, go figure. Mr. Richards told the BBC Wales Sunday that the museums would also charge visitors to special events such as tours and exhibitions and close earlier in the winter. Museum of Wales has had a 3 million reduction in this grant, but it said that because it continues to occur a year-on-year deficit of 1.5 million, it had to address the total deficit by 4.5 million by the end of March. There we are. That is what is happening. Civil service cannot run a bath. That's how it always has been. That's how Wales has been run into the ground. They can't run businesses. Mrs. Richardson said the museum only heard what the cut would be just before Christmas, so it's been extremely difficult for my whole team to make a change on that scale within a matter of weeks. She said 90% of the costs were for staff, and she said she had never ever known anything like this at any of the organisations where she had worked. Well, you know what? Farming's having it worse than that, so get used to it. Everybody's going to have it. 4.8 billion in the climate fund, and you're being shafted the same as the rest of us. Mrs. Richardson did not give the exact figures for the number of jobs going at the organisation, which according to the museum's website has more than 600 staff and about 1.8 million visitors a year. 600 staff! But she added, I always said that to get to the kind of numbers that we needed, we would be looking at least 90 jobs, and that has proven to be the case, but we're still not at a total figure yet. See that lady at the top in charge of it all? She supports Labour. She supports all this stuff. But you know what? Knock, knock. Labour have shafted you as well as the rest of us. All of us are being shafted by this Welsh Government. If we were to get further cuts on that scale, we could not continue to run as the size of the museums we are now, says Jane Richardson. History is what people learn from. And history of our Welsh Labour government and our Welsh Senedd will be that they have shafted their own people for the sake of big business and academic nutty ideas. 4.8 billion there sitting and being spent by academics on pet projects. She said there was a massive problem with the condition of the National Museum of Cardiff. Unless we're able to secure more funding for that building, that will have to close. The chief executive said Cardiff Council has already shut the next door building, City Hall, which is the same age and had exactly the same problems to us. So when you have water coming through and failing electric, there is a question hanging over the future of that building. She said unless there was more money for the Cardiff Museum, which houses extraordinary special objects, we would obviously then be looking at where else we would have a presence in Cardiff. These people should have been doing this as it was going. The civil service should have been doing all this. These people running this stuff should have been keeping all this up, keep going. But they can't run it because they always push the problems ahead of them. Like Drakeford went to see him then in 2021, say, oh, it's great, this is lovely, and he's fucking shafted you all. Get used to it because everybody's going to have it in Wales. And let's start to read this. And there'll be all sorts of conversations about how we did that. But we are really clear as an organisation that the building needs urgent critical work for us to be able to continue opening to the public. Mrs. Richardson said museum officials are being as positive we can about the massive budget cut with a restructure and a new strategy to get more income. The income is there for you. 4.8 billion in the climate fund. £4,800 million is being wasted on fantasy projects. Well, you get the shafted by that guy there who said everything will be all right, my lovelies. He was lying to you. There's some good news for the organisation last week with the award of a £412,000 lottery grant for the National Slate Museum in Llanberis, which is enormously exciting. However, if we were to get further cuts on that scale, I would need to be very honest with government and with all our stakeholders that we could not continue to run as the size of the museum we are in now. We would have to look at our buildings. They are National Museum of Cardiff, St Fagans National Museum of History of Cardiff, National Waterfront Museum, Swansea Big Pit National Coal Museum, the Blaenavon, Torrevine National Slate Museum in Llanberis, Gwynedd, National Wool Museum near Newcastle Emlyn, Carmarthenshire and National Roman League Museum. They're going to chuck you all under the bus, and you voted for them, you idiots. Mrs. Richardson said the museum would not reintroduce charging for entry because they would be worse off after losing tax advantage as a result. What? Mrs. Richardson said the museum would not reintroduce charging for entry because they would be worse off after losing tax advantages as a result. So they've been stopped for making money because they're being charged tax by their own government. That is, well. So if they charge people to go into the museum, the Welsh government charges them tax more than they would make. That's what I've just read, and I'm thinking to myself, what a nutty people we have in charge of. Surely they would just remove the tax off that if they can't keep going. Jesus wept. But they would encourage donations by visitors. See, they get around the tax law then. Charge for special events such as the Art of the Selfie expedition in Cardiff, featuring a painting by the Dutch master Van Gogh and pull back on winter opening times. Conservative culture spoken Tom Gifford called the museum situation concerning not just for the individuals who will be impacted, but for all of us. He added disproportionate funding cuts are putting the preservation of our shared heritage at risk, while Labour Welsh Government prioritised money for politicians. The Welsh Government said work had been undertaken to assess the budget cuts and that it was in discussions about the future of the National Museum of Cardiff. A spokesman said, we have been clear our budget is up to 700 million less in real terms when it was set in 2021, and we have had to take extremely difficult decisions because we are spending all your money on climate change. We are spending 4,800 million on climate change. Yes, 4,800 million on climate change while we cut your historic museums and we stop your farmers from producing food for you all. There we are, the nutty Welsh government in a nutshell. So please comment, rate and subscribe before I blow a gasket reading this anymore. Ta-da! All the best, guys.